Two strangers stormed the cockpit, weapons hidden in their jackets. Passengers screamed, lights flickered in the chaos. In the middle of the cabin, a 17-year-old girl jolted awake, eyes wide with fear, but her mind forcing itself to think clearly. She crawled between the seats, saw the radio panel with wires cut and sparking. She remembered her father's voice from countless nights of training. If all channels go silent, try frequency 2295. She reconnected the wires, activated the signal. Her voice quiet but steady. Eagle Zero transmitting emergency vector to NATO station. Alert lights blazed red. Eurofighters launched immediately. The lead pilot froze. Eagle Zero. That's my old commander's code. Anna Berger, 17 years old, long brown hair, deep eyes that saw more than people expected. Always quiet, always observing. On Flight 471 from Berlin to New York, she sat in seat 14A, sleeping with cheap earbuds, her head against the cold window. Around her, passengers lived their ordinary lives, businessmen reviewing presentations, tourists planning itineraries, families managing restless children. Everyone absorbed in their own worlds, nobody noticing the simply dressed teenager clutching a small, worn notebook. She was traveling to America to study aerospace engineering, the dream of her father, the dream he had died pursuing 5 years earlier. Captain Lucas Berger, Eurofighter pilot with call sign Eagle Zero, had gone missing during a classified mission. The circumstances never fully explained, body never recovered, just a folded flag and empty condolences. Anna never spoke about her past. Those who asked received vague answers. My father worked with radar systems. A technical truth that concealed the emotional reality. When the flight attendant offered drinks, Anna smiled softly, then adjusted the seatbelt for an elderly woman beside her whose hands shook too much to fasten it properly. Thank you, dear, the woman whispered. You're very kind. It's nothing, Anna replied, the automatic response of someone who had learned to minimize herself, to take up less space, to avoid attention. A passenger across the aisle whispered to his companion, that girl looks terrified of flying. But Anna wasn't afraid of flying. She was afraid of forgetting, afraid that 5 years of grief had begun to erode the memories, that her father's voice was becoming harder to hear. She looked out the window at the long trails of clouds stretching to the horizon, remembering nights when her father taught her to read coordinates by starlight, to navigate using methods pilots had learned before GPS made everything automatic and easy, the human touch. She still wore his old watch, heavy on her thin wrist. Engraved on the back, 2295, the sky always listens. A frequency number, a promise, a connection that survived death. As the flight entered North Atlantic airspace, communication systems experienced minor interference. Nothing alarming, just routine static that the crew noted but didn't worry about. But Anna noticed the signal lights blinking in irregular patterns, the kind of irregularity that suggested intentional disruption rather than natural interference. She had spent too many hours in her father's workshop, learning radio systems, understanding how signals traveled, recognizing when patterns indicated problems rather than coincidence. Something was wrong. She couldn't articulate it, couldn't point to specific evidence, she just felt it, the way experienced pilots sense weather changes before instruments confirm them. She stayed quiet, because what could she say? That she had a feeling the lights were blinking wrong. No one would listen to a teenager's intuition. So she watched, waited, and hoped she was wrong. Her father had taught her many things in the years before he disappeared. How to read technical manuals, how to troubleshoot radio systems, how to remain calm when panic seemed the only logical response. But most importantly, he taught her that sometimes the right action looks like doing nothing, that patience is its own form of courage, that waiting for the correct moment matters more than acting quickly at the wrong one. When do you know it's the right moment? She had asked during one late-night session in his workshop, surrounded by disassembled radios and circuit boards. When doing nothing becomes more dangerous than doing something, he had answered, his hands steady as he soldered connections. When you're the only person who can act. When the cost of silence exceeds the cost of speaking up. You'll know. Your gut will tell you. Anna closed her eyes, trying to sleep, trying to ignore the unease spreading through her chest like cold water. But her gut was already screaming. 4 hours into the flight, crossing the vast empty expanse of the Atlantic where commercial jets fly alone between continents, where help is distant and rescue unlikely, the unease crystallized into certainty. Two men stood up simultaneously, moving with practiced coordination, pulling weapons from their jacket linings and rushing the cockpit before anyone could process what was happening. The flight attendant near the galley screamed. The cockpit door slammed shut. Passengers erupted in panic, some crying, some frozen, some fumbling for phones that were useless at 35,000 feet over open ocean. The elderly woman beside Anna grabbed her arm, terror making her grip surprisingly strong. "What's happening? What do we do?" Anna hugged her, feeling the woman's entire body tremble, and spoke with a calmness she didn't feel. "I'll think of something. I promise. Just stay calm." But even as she said those words, even as she tried to project confidence, her own heart hammered against her ribs, her own breath came too fast, her own mind raced through scenarios that all ended badly. She wasn't a hero. She was 17 years old, barely 5 feet tall, armed with nothing but the knowledge her father had given her and a frequency number that might not even work anymore. But she was also her father's daughter, and her father had never backed down from impossible situations. So neither would she. The cabin lights flickered as the hijackers gained control, alternating between normal and emergency lighting, creating a strobe effect that amplified the panic. Children screamed, adults prayed, flight attendants tried to maintain order, but their training had never prepared them for this, for real violence, for genuine terror. One of the hijackers emerged from the cockpit long enough to shout instructions in accented German, "Everyone stay seated. Phones down. No communication. We control this aircraft now." He brandished his weapon, something crude but effective, homemade but deadly, the kind of improvised tool that security screenings sometimes missed. Anna pressed herself into her seat, making herself small, invisible, just another terrified teenager, while her mind worked through possibilities. The cockpit was sealed, the pilots compromised, communication cut. They were over the Atlantic, no nearby airports, no immediate help, no obvious solutions. But her father's voice echoed in her memory, lessons from late-night training sessions where he walked her through emergency protocols. First rule of crisis: don't assume all systems are down. Look for backups, look for redundancy. Every aircraft has multiple ways to communicate, multiple ways to signal distress. You just have to know where to look. While passengers sobbed and prayed, Anna studied the cabin, looking for the technical access panel she knew existed somewhere, the maintenance point where emergency radio backups could be accessed. She spotted it near the rear galley, partially hidden by a service cart, a small panel marked with technical codes most passengers wouldn't understand. But Anna understood. She had obsessively studied aircraft schematics after her father disappeared, trying to understand the systems he flew, trying to feel closer to him through technical knowledge. She whispered to the elderly woman, "I need to move. Stay here, stay quiet. I'll be back." "Where are you going?" "It's not safe." "Nowhere is safe right now. But maybe I can make it safer." Anna unbuckled, dropped to the floor, and began crawling between seats, staying low, moving during moments when the hijackers were distracted. A businessman grabbed her ankle. "What are you doing? You'll get us all killed." She kicked free, hissing back, "I'm trying to save us. Now let go." She reached the panel, her hands shaking so badly she could barely grip the recessed handle. Her heart pounded so loud she was sure everyone could hear it. The panel opened with a click that sounded impossibly loud in her heightened state of awareness. Inside, a mess of wires and circuit boards, backup systems for various aircraft functions. She found the COM2 radio backup, the secondary communication system few passengers knew existed, that hijackers who weren't aviation experts might not think to disable. The main wires were cut, just as she feared, cleanly severed with tools or knives, professional sabotage suggesting planning and knowledge. But the secondary connection was intact, just disabled, switched off rather than destroyed. Anna's fingers moved with muscle memory from countless practice sessions, reconnecting wires exactly as her father had taught her, bypassing damaged sections, rerouting signals through backup pathways. A man in the aisle spotted her. "Hey, the girl is doing something. Stop her." One of the hijackers turned, started moving toward her, weapon raised. Anna had no time for fear, no time for hesitation. She completed the final connection, flipped the power switch, and watched the COM2 indicator light glow green. She grabbed the emergency microphone, fingers finding the frequency dial, spinning it to 2295, the number her father had made her memorize, had made her practice, had told her would work when nothing else did. This frequency bypasses normal channels, he had explained during one training session. It's a military emergency backup, monitored 24/7 by NATO command. If you ever need help, if every other option fails, use this. The sky always listens. On 2295, she pressed the transmit button, her voice barely above a whisper but steady, clear, exactly as he had taught her. Eagle Zero transmitting emergency vector. Civilian flight hijacked. Coordinates transmission automatic. Multiple hostiles. Request immediate assistance. At the NATO Air Command Center in northern Germany, radar operators jumped as priority alerts screamed through their systems. The call sign Eagle Zero appeared on screens, triggering protocols that hadn't activated in 5 years, authentication codes belonging to a pilot officially listed as killed in action. Colonel Max Reinhard, senior duty officer and former squadron mate of Lucas Berger, stared at his screen in disbelief. That's impossible. Eagle Zero was Lucas's call sign. He died 5 years ago. This has to be an error. Sir, authentication is valid. Signal origin is civilian flight 471, currently over the North Atlantic. And sir, there's a voice transmission attached to the emergency broadcast. Reinhard played the audio, hearing a young female voice, scared but controlled, reporting a hijacking. His daughter. Lucas's daughter. He used to bring her to the hangars sometimes, taught her radio systems. He always said if something happened to him, he'd make sure she could call for help. Reinhard's hand shook as he activated squadron alerts. All available assets scramble immediately. We have an Eagle Zero emergency broadcast. I don't care if it's a ghost calling, we answer. Always. 2 Eurofighters on patrol northeast of the Azores received the priority tasking and altered course immediately, afterburners igniting, racing toward the coordinates that appeared automatically with the distress call. Inside Flight 471, Anna clutched the microphone, praying someone had heard, praying the old codes still worked, praying her father's promise wasn't empty. The radio crackled, and a voice emerged through static. Civilian Flight 471, this is Falcon Lead. Who transmitted that call sign? We need authentication. Anna's voice cracked with relief. His daughter. I'm his daughter. We're under siege. 2 hostiles in control of the cockpit. Please, we need help. Silence for 3 seconds that felt like 3 hours. Then the pilot's voice came back, thick with emotion. Roger that, Eagle Zero. Your father saved my life in Afghanistan. I owe him. We're coming for you. Hold tight. The hijacker reached Anna, grabbed her by the hair, yanked her up. What did you do? What did you transmit? She looked him in the eyes, terrified but defiant. I called the sky, and the sky answered. My father taught me that. He raised his weapon. And outside, barely visible through the cabin windows, 2 silver shapes appeared in the distance, sunlight glinting off their wings. The Eurofighters had arrived. The hijackers in the cockpit fought to redirect the aircraft toward uncontrolled airspace, trying to disappear into gaps between monitored zones where military response would be complicated. One shouted orders in a language Anna didn't recognize: reduce altitude, change heading. We need to lose them. But NATO radar had locked onto the active Eagle Zero signal, guiding the Eurofighters with precision that made escape impossible. Colonel Reinhard stood in the command center, staring at his screens, memories flooding back of a younger officer who had been more than a colleague, a friend, who died under circumstances that never made sense. He spoke quietly, more to himself than to the operators around him. Lucas once disobeyed direct orders to save civilians. The court-martial wanted to crucify him for it, but command eventually agreed he made the right call. And now his code saves his daughter. Full circle. The Eurofighters descended to matching altitude, flanking the commercial aircraft close enough that passengers on both sides could see them through the windows. Inside the cabin, the sight of the military fighters triggered mixed reactions. Some passengers cheered, hope returning, others panicked further, afraid of what would happen next. The hijacker holding Anna shook her violently. You called military response, you stupid girl. Do you know what you've done? She met his eyes without flinching, channeling every ounce of courage she had inherited from her father. I know exactly what I've done. My father taught me never to surrender to bullies. He died fighting people like you. I won't dishonor his memory by being afraid now. He pressed the weapon against her temple. I will kill you. Maybe. But the jets out there will see it, and they have weapons that will turn this aircraft into debris before you can celebrate. So ask yourself, is killing one girl worth dying for? Her logic cut through his rage, forcing calculation. He needed time, leverage, thought. Anna used his hesitation, remembering her father's watch, the hidden feature he had shown her during one late-night lesson. This watch isn't just a watch, he had explained, opening the back to reveal a tiny circuit board. If you ever need to send precise coordinates, press this button sequence. It activates an emergency transponder that broadcasts location data on military frequencies. Last resort option, but it works. She pressed the sequence now, activating the transponder her father had hidden in the watch 5 years ago, technology he had given her without ever imagining she would need it. The signal broadcast automatically, feeding precise aircraft coordinates directly to the Eurofighter radar systems. The fighter pilots received the enhanced data and immediately understood its significance. Falcon lead to Falcon 2, we have exact hostile position inside the aircraft. Prepare precision laser designation. They activated targeting lasers, not to fire weapons, but to illuminate the cockpit area, to blind and disorient through sudden brilliant light, to create a moment of confusion that trained pilots could exploit. The cockpit flooded with red laser light. The hijackers screamed, temporarily blinded, hands releasing controls. The co-pilot, who had been held at gunpoint for the past 20 minutes, saw his opportunity and lunged, grappling for the weapon, fighting with the desperation of someone who knew this was his only chance. The aircraft lurched violently as the struggle disrupted controls, nose dipping, beginning an uncontrolled descent. Passengers screamed, oxygen masks dropped, the cabin tilted at an angle that defied normal flight. Anna, still connected to the emergency radio, grabbed the microphone. The pilots are fighting. The aircraft is falling. We need guidance. Falcon lead's voice came through immediately, professional and calm despite the crisis. Stabilize the aircraft. Pull back on the yoke, level your wings. Follow my instructions exactly. The co-pilot heard the transmission through the cockpit speakers, managed to get one hand on the controls, and followed the Eurofighter pilot's guidance step by step. Pull back 3 degrees more. Hold it. Now level your wings, use trim to compensate. You're doing great. Almost there. The aircraft slowly stabilized, leveling out, the uncontrolled descent becoming controlled flight again. The hijacker in the cabin, seeing his plan collapse, released Anna and ran toward the cockpit, perhaps to help his partners, perhaps for one last desperate action. But passengers who had been paralyzed by fear found courage in the moment. 3 men tackled him simultaneously, holding him down while a flight attendant secured his hands with zip ties. Within 5 minutes, both hijackers were subdued, the pilots had full control, and the aircraft was being guided toward Shannon Airport in Ireland, the nearest suitable landing site. The Eurofighters maintained escort formation, their presence visible and reassuring, proof that help had arrived, that the sky had indeed listened. Colonel Reinhard monitored everything from the command center, watching his screens with tears streaming down his weathered face. Lucas, your kid just saved an entire aircraft using what you taught her. I don't know if you can hear this, wherever you are, but your legacy lives. Your code worked. Your daughter is everything you hoped she would be. As Flight 471 made its emergency landing, surrounded by emergency vehicles and law enforcement, as the hijackers were arrested and passengers evacuated, Anna sat by a window and finally allowed herself to cry. Not from fear or relief, but from the grief she had held back for 5 years, from the overwhelming sense that her father had been with her through every moment of the crisis, guiding her hands, steadying her voice, giving her courage through lessons he had taught before he died. The elderly woman she had helped with her seatbelt hours earlier hugged her tightly. You saved us all, child. You're a hero. Anna shook her head. I'm not a hero. I'm just my father's daughter. He's the hero. I just remembered what he taught me. The radio crackled one final time, Falcon lead's voice coming through. Eagle 0, this is Falcon Command. Your father would be proud. Mission secure. You did good, kid. You did real good. Anna managed a watery smile, pressing her father's watch against her heart. He taught me everything I needed. I just had to trust him one more time. Outside, the Eurofighters made one final pass overhead before returning to their patrol route, wings dipping in salute, the traditional acknowledgement of courage witnessed and respected. A young girl had called the sky using her father's code, and the sky, remembering the man who had served with honor, had answered his daughter's cry for help. Some legacies are written in medals and ceremonies, others in the moment a daughter saves lives using lessons from a father she will never see again. Both matter, but only one transforms grief into grace. Within hours, the story dominated international news, spreading across social media with the speed that only truly remarkable events achieve. 17-year-old girl uses decommissioned military code to save hijacked flight, became the headline that captured imaginations worldwide. But as journalists dug deeper, the full story emerged, and it became something even more profound than a thwarted hijacking. It became a story about legacy, about teaching, about the ways love survives death through knowledge passed from one generation to the next. Former squadron mates of Lucas Berger came forward, sharing memories of the pilot they had known, the friend they had lost, the teacher who believed in preparing his daughter for worst-case scenarios no one wanted to imagine. He used to talk about Anna constantly, one retired pilot told CNN. He was teaching her everything he knew, not because he expected her to need it, but because knowledge was the best inheritance he could give. He joked that if he ever went down, his code would live on through her. We all laughed. Turns out he was serious. The aviation community gave Anna a nickname that stuck: Sky Daughter, the girl who bridged Earth and heaven using her father's frequency. The elderly passenger Anna had helped gave multiple interviews, describing the moment she realized the quiet teenager beside her was actually saving everyone's lives. She was terrified, I could see her hands shaking, but her eyes were clear, focused, like a soldier's eyes. She knew what to do even though she was scared. That's real courage, not the absence of fear, but acting despite it. Anna avoided media attention, refusing interviews, declining to appear on news programs, maintaining the quiet dignity that had characterized her throughout the crisis. She simply wanted to return to normal life, to continue her education, to honor her father's memory by living well rather than talking about living well. But Colonel Reinhard, the man who had been on duty when her call came through, ensured her future was secured. He wrote personally to the aerospace engineering program where Anna had been accepted, explaining what had happened, vouching for her skills, making it clear that she possessed practical knowledge exceeding most students with years more training. She's not old enough for official recognition in most systems, his letter concluded. But the sky has already chosen her. Give this girl a chance. Let her continue what her father started teaching her. Trust me when I say she'll be an asset to any program that accepts her. The school not only accepted her but offered a full scholarship created in her father's name, the first recipient being the daughter who had proven his teaching mattered. NATO officially retired the Eagle Zero call sign with full honors, creating a memorial in the command center where Lucas Berger's name was displayed alongside other fallen pilots. But they also did something unprecedented. They registered Eagle 02 as Anna's honorary call sign, not for active military use, but as recognition that courage and competence could be inherited, that legacy mattered. Social media exploded with the hashtag Call the Sky, millions of people sharing stories of parents who taught them skills they never expected to use, of knowledge passed down that saved lives or solved problems or made a difference in moments that mattered. Teachers shared stories of students they had trained who went on to do remarkable things. Parents shared lessons they had taught their children, hoping the knowledge would matter someday. The movement became about more than one girl and one frequency. It became about the invisible threads connecting generations, about the ways love persists through teaching, about the truth that the best inheritance isn't money or property but wisdom and skill. A military correspondent wrote an essay that went viral, capturing what many felt but couldn't articulate. Anna Berger didn't save that aircraft with strength or weapons or authority. She saved it with knowledge her father gave her, with trust that what he taught her mattered, with courage to use skills in a moment when using them meant risking everything. That's the inheritance that matters most, not what you leave behind, but what you pass forward. Flight attendants and pilots began recommending that airlines teach basic emergency procedures to interested passengers, creating voluntary programs where people could learn what to do in crises. Most emergencies, one program director explained, aren't solved by professionals, they're solved by ordinary people who happen to know what to do. Anna proved that. Let's give more people the knowledge they need to be heroes if the moment requires it. And the program was named the Eagle Zero Initiative, teaching radio basics, emergency procedures, crisis management, all the skills that might help someone save lives someday. Anna heard about it and smiled, understanding that her father's teaching had spread beyond just her, that his legacy now included thousands of people learning skills they might never need but that could mean everything someday. He always said knowledge was the best weapon, she told the one reporter she agreed to speak with, not to hurt people, but to protect them. I think he'd like knowing that's what people remember. If you believe true strength comes from knowledge, pass it forward. Comment. I will teach with love. 6 months after the hijacking, Anna stood in the Deutsches Museum in Munich, staring at a display that hadn't existed on her last visit, the Eagle Zero Legacy, When Knowledge Saves Lives. The exhibit featured her father's flight suit, his helmet, his service record, and the watch she had worn during the hijacking, now donated to preserve the story for future generations. But what moved her most was the recording, her father's voice, preserved from a training video he had made years before his death, explaining emergency radio procedures to young pilots. This frequency 2295 is your lifeline when everything else fails. It bypasses normal channels, connects directly to military emergency response, and it's monitored continuously. Remember it, teach it to people you care about, because someday someone might need it to call the sky for help. His voice, preserved in digital format, teaching the lesson that had saved his daughter's life 5 years after his death. Anna pressed her hand against the display glass, tears flowing freely, no longer trying to hide her grief or her pride. A young girl, maybe 10 years old, tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Mommy, why is that lady crying?" The mother read the exhibit plaque, then knelt beside her daughter, because she's remembering someone she loved who taught her important things, and she's proud that what he taught her helped other people. The girl considered this seriously, like when you teach me things. Exactly like that. What we teach you today might help you or someone else years from now. That's why learning matters. Anna overheard the exchange and smiled through her tears, understanding that the lesson was spreading naturally, organically, exactly as her father would have wanted. She returned to her studies in the aerospace engineering program, excelling in classes that felt less like learning and more like remembering, as if her father had planted seeds of knowledge that were only now sprouting. During a practical exam on emergency communication systems, the instructor asked her to explain frequency 2295. She smiled. "It's the frequency where the sky always listens. It's the frequency my father taught me. It's the frequency that saved my life and 147 others. But most importantly, it's the frequency that proves love doesn't end with death, it transforms into knowledge, and knowledge saves lives." The instructor nodded slowly. Perfect answer. 10 out of 10. After class, she visited a small memorial garden the school had created honoring Lucas Berger, a quiet space with a bench and a plaque bearing his call sign and the words, "He taught courage by teaching competence." She sat on the bench, opened her notebook, and wrote a letter she would never send because the recipient was gone. "Dad, I understand now why you taught me all those things I thought I'd never use. You weren't preparing me for one specific moment. You were teaching me to trust myself, to believe I could handle whatever came. The radio frequency saved the plane, but the confidence saved me. Thank you for both." Years later, Anna would become an aerospace engineer specializing in emergency communication systems, improving the technology that saves lives, teaching new generations the same lessons her father had taught her. She would give lectures titled "The Sky Always Listens," explaining both the technical aspects of emergency frequencies and the human aspects of courage under pressure. And she would always wear her father's watch, the one with 2295 engraved on the back, a reminder that some connections transcend death, that teaching is love made practical, that knowledge is an inheritance that never depreciates. The core lesson, the one she had learned at 35,000 feet over the Atlantic while hijackers threatened, death approached, and her father's voice guided her from beyond the grave. True strength isn't physical, it's remembering what you were taught when fear tries to make you forget. It's trusting that love survives through lessons learned and applied. It's knowing that the sky always listens to those who remember the right frequency.